here is a fact. This is just my own opinions from 3 years of doing nothing but app growth. I've spent around 12,500 hours doing nothing but app growth. And inside those hours, I've spent over 1,400 of them in direct conversations with founders and growth marketers. And that's 58 straight days of uninterrupted consulting. I've actually done the math and I have some insights. So you can take it with a pinch of salt or don't. Either way, I think you'll find this useful. So for the past few years, the internet has been obsessed with one thing: virality. It's viral apps, viral TikToks, viral loops, viral everything, viral here, viral there. And yet most of the founders I speak to are more confused than ever. At least the trend from what I see compared to 3 years ago, there's so much happening at the same time that people really don't know what to do. And this is specifically talking about the consumer space. So consumer apps, consumer social. So everyone's watched the tutorials, the YouTube videos, they've posted the TikTok content to try and get distribution. And most of them are still stuck. Their app is still stuck at the same MRR, the same users, the same kind of growth as it was 6 months ago. But why is that? Especially like funded founders who are looking for the hockey stick growth. There's even enterprise companies that are struggling with new product lines because distribution is not the same as it was. And that's a big thing. So there's a big misconception in consumer apps right now. And my honest take is that everyone says product is dead, distribution is the new meta. I don't think product is dead. And I don't think distribution is everything. And I know that goes against the gospel of what goes around in the tech space, but you need to hear me out here. So as far as distribution goes, making TikToks has become easier than ever. So our floods have been feeded with slop. And yet good marketers, you see it from good agencies, good marketers, good growth people remain among the most sought after professionals in the space, in the planet. Now think about this from the other side. So this is the distribution. So everyone says, hey, distribution is a new thing. But what you really see is that there's a lot more people making content. There's a lot more slop out there as far as content goes. And still with AI, it's easier than ever to make content. But still, marketers are still good marketers are still one of the highest paid positions in the world. Now, from the product side, building a product is now widely accessible and everyone knows this. So the barrier to entry is the lowest it's ever been. Vibe coding is a thing. Anyone can make an app. AI can one-shot an MVP in a few minutes. But does that mean that developers, software engineers, that technical founders aren't valuable anymore? No, that doesn't. In my opinion, that does not mean that those positions aren't valuable anymore. You need to forget what the internet says for a minute and you need to go back and focus on the fundamentals. I've worked with enough people to know, with enough apps to know that it all comes down to fundamentals. I've done martial arts also my entire life, basically up until a few years ago. It was always like this. As soon as people start overcomplicating things, getting too focused on the kind of tactical, you lose. So you got to go back and focus on the fundamentals. And the fundamentals here are you need to build a killer product and you need to aggressively distributed. Now, I want to get into a bit of how both sides work from my experience. Again, take it with a pinch of salt. So as far as building goes, this part specifically for people who have not yet achieved product market fit. This can even be enterprise teams, app studios. This can be if you're a funded founder, but you're still like pre-revenue or your user base still very small. This section is specifically for you. I want to go back and give you an example to illustrate what I'm about to say. So if we go back, since the internet went mainstream in the mid to late 1990s, information has been commoditized. So everyone has access to virtually any piece of information for free at any time on their phone. So here's a question that, in my opinion, should bother you, should get you thinking. If that's the case, if now everyone has access to all info they want, why didn't universities go out of business? Why did info businesses had their biggest boom in the last few years? They sell information and suddenly all that information was available for free. So the world's greatest lectures on YouTube, you can find any book as a PDF online. But as far as the universities go, enrollment, tuition, all these things kept rising and people kept paying. Why? Here's the thing, like information was not the product. The product was the curation of information. That's a very different thing. So it's information that's selected for a specific use. It's organized in a specific sequence from credible sources. And that curation, that context from trustworthy sources is what people actually pay for, because that's a lot of work. Obviously, there's a deeper lesson here on why people buy, which is fundamentally has very little to do with logic, but we can can speak on that at a different time. My point is, you do not need a new idea. You do not need a new thing. You do not need to solve a new problem. A good consumer app requires far less than people think. And in my opinion, it comes down to two things. So one is a novel angle to an existing solution. This is not a novel solution. This is not a new solution, a new product to solve. This is a novel angle to an existing solution. Let me give you an example. A Bible app for women. So you have Bible apps dominating the space. If you create something that has a bit of a nuanced approach, like a novel angle, like a Bible app for a specific group, that works very well. Another one would be a screen blocker, like Opal, for example, is a great example, but specifically that won't unlock until you complete a task, until you do 10 push-ups or until you exercise, until you do a task. That's a novel angle to an existing solution. You're basically doing the same thing as like these big screen blocker apps are doing, but you're doing it to a different angle. That's a great way to go about it. Why? You need to have embedded virality in your product positioning. You need to. You need to understand what people will respond to. If you niche down in the beginning, it's insanely useful, because I think Alex Hormozy gives this example in one of his books, which is essentially, if you go and buy a book that says, the title is Time Management, right? The book probably sells for $10. Then you have Time Management for Accountants. That book probably sells for $25. And then you have Time Management for early stage accountants working with real estate brokers. Obviously, niching down has pros and cons, but that's like a novel angle to an existing solution. People have done this for centuries. The solution already exists, so your job is to repackage it for a specific person with a specific need. So this is the product side and how I see it. And the second one within product still is, it has to be visually self-explanatory. So you need to understand that besides the whole AI bubble, which is great, short form content is probably the highest leverage thing that's been around. You can distribute it across all platforms. People consume it very fast. So you get a lot of distribution very fast. So your app has to be plugged into those videos, that style of content, which means you need to adjust your screens. You need to adjust how your app works so that it looks good in those forms of content. So it needs to be visually self-explanatory. If people watched a 15-second demo of what your app does with the sound off, with no text on screen, would they understand what it does? The answer needs to be yes, right? You need to have that be true, so you have something that works on short form video. Obviously, you can make other things work on short form content. What I'm telling you is that this would be the easiest way, the way you can build the most leverage with the current technology you have access to. And if the answer to that is no, you have a problem that really is tough to fix with more marketing, right? So your app demo should function as a standalone TikTok. And there's examples here of a couples app from Jack Frick's. Cal AI, for example, is a great example. Now, as for the third point within product still, you need to have 1 to 2 main features, one value proposition. The main reason is, please hear me out. The main reason users churn in things like communities and things like consumer apps and things like software is because of overwhelm. Like, users have too much. They don't understand how they're going to use all these things, so they get overwhelmed and they churn. Besides that, if you're acquiring new users, it needs to be simple enough so people understand what it does. You don't need 3, 5 features. You need one value prop, one main feature. I do believe as the product gets more mature, as you scale, you will naturally add more functionalities and have the app be more complete. But I do believe you have a lot of value in keeping it simple. The fastest way to kill a consumer app is to build it like enterprise software. Nobody downloads an app because it has 47 features. That's literally unheard of. They download it because it does one thing they care about better than what they're currently using. That's it. So recapping the 3 things for product: novel angle, visually obvious, and radically simple. Everything else, in my opinion, is noise. Now, part 2, distribution. The second big pillar of what we're talking about. This part is where I think everyone thinks they understand what's going on. Everyone talks about the growth hacks and the new thing and the new kid on the block, but almost nobody really understands it. So I'm going to try and keep it simple. It's not like I'm a genius of distribution thing. It's just that I look at it from a fundamental standpoint. I'm not trying to look at distribution like, oh, what's the new TikTok trending sound? That's all bullshit, man. That's all. You can't lose your time looking at the new trending sound on TikTok. Just learn marketing. Marketing is a science. If you truly want to become a good marketer, or even if you just want to make a few bucks online, what I'm about to share now will serve you whether you're running for president or marketing a couples app on TikTok. And that's not hyperbole. The fundamentals are actually identical and they're not new. So with that being said, let me take you back about 2,000 years. So in 63 BC, a Roman lawyer named Marcus Cicero ran for the highest office in Rome with no military record, no family name, and no inherited power. If you're not familiar with Cicero, you should look into it because it's one of the best public speakers of all time and his lessons are timeless. Cicero was running for the highest office in Rome. He had no credentials whatsoever, and by every measure, he should have lost. But he won by a landslide. He won, just undoubtedly won. And how is that possible? His brother wrote him a campaign handbook, and in it, he laid out the principles for mass persuasion that every successful marketer, knowingly or not, still uses today. This is huge, guys. Everyone, the kids you see on TikTok going viral, the people you see making long form YouTube videos that are, getting all the attention, all these people go back to base themselves in the same fundamentals, whether they know it or not. So let me explain what I mean by this. Every viral TikTok, every high converting ad, every piece of content that's ever made you stop scrolling operates on the same principle. So what I suggest now, before I go into it, is every time you're scrolling after you hear this, be intentional. Every time you stop, every time something catches your attention, ask yourself why. Why did this catch my attention? Why did I stop here? Why did I consume this piece of content? Once you understand the things I'm about to share, it'll become easy. So the first thing is emotion first, logic second, always. Once you understand that emotion is the only thing that people give a about, you need to understand the two mechanisms that keep people consuming. So emotion first, logic second. That needs to be a concept you internalize. If you appeal to emotion successfully in people, the facts might not even matter. So with that being said, let's get into mechanism one, which is open loops. An open loop is basically an unresolved question in the reader's mind. It's the reason you can't stop watching a show mid-episode. It's the reason clickbait still wins even when people know it's clickbait. It's the reason why Get Ready With Me videos work so well. It's because people want to see the end result. It starts something. It's an open loop. It opens a loop in the beginning that people want to kind of close. The human brain has a physical discomfort with unresolved information. So psychologists call it Zeigarnik. I hope I'm saying it right. And which basically just says we remember incomplete tasks and unfinished stories far better than completed ones. When you say, I spent $5,000 on XYZ and I hate what I found, you've opened a loop. The reader's brain will not rest until that loop closes, right? And every great piece of content opens a loop in the first few seconds and they delay closing it until the very end. I've seen a lot of people also talk about this and they refer to this as the promise of a reward, right? So you have all those videos, for example, where it's like as the person is talking, they're cutting fruit, or as the person is talking, they're doing something with their hands that you want to see what the end result is. You have those very famous videos of like bottles falling down stairs, right? There's a promise of a reward. That's an open loop, right? So that's the first concept, open loop. And then the second mechanism is called the curiosity gap. So the curiosity gap is the space between what someone knows and what they want to know. This is very, very simple. It's just curiosity. It's foreshadowing basically in marketing. When a video or when a movie rather shows you the ending first and then cuts to 72 hours earlier, that's a curiosity gap. Now there's a whole period of time that you don't know what happened that you want to know, right? So you know the destination, you don't know the route. So you sit and watch for 2 hours. How stupid is that? But that's how our brain works. Open loops and curiosity gaps are the architecture of the human brain, of how human attention works. Cicero used them, soap operas use them, and the best content creators on TikTok, whether they know the terminology or not, use them in every single video. This is the sum of what I wanted to share with you today, and I just have a note for all my fellow founders that are either bootstrapping or have just been funded and are being pushed to hit growth milestones, or even, if you're a growth marketer, a head of marketing at like an enterprise company that's pushing you to build and grow new product lines. Building in consumer means you need to speak to the masses one way or another. You can't hide, like in B2B, behind a sales team, behind a niche LinkedIn audience. You're in the arena. And in the arena, the rules haven't changed in 2000 years. A recap, build something simple that solves a real problem from a fresh angle, then distribute it by making people feel something before you ask them to think about anything. Open loops create tension, curiosity gaps sustain attention, and emotion drives action. And that's the sum of persuasion. And persuasion, unlike growth hacks, trends, algorithms, persuasion does not have an expiration date.